How are you today? It's your pal Boiler Dowd, trying a little live lunchtime feed. A little bit of reaction to some of the football news we've had recently, and looking ahead in basketball a little bit. Hope this is working. I can never tell if I'm doing a good job at this still. On the YouTube monitor, it doesn't tell me if there's if I've got good audio or not. But I believe I do. So I'm going to go forward and give it a try. Hope your day is going well, and hope you're excited and looking ahead to the IU game. It's Thursday night, of course, in Assembly Hall. Purdue will play the hated Hoosiers and look to extend their streak. I'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute. But first, I want to talk about football, all the moves from coaching moves, the needs that are still out there, and the transfers in, along with some of the attrition. Before I do that, I want to mention our sponsors, of course, Gridiron Metalworks. If you've been following them on Twitter, you probably have seen they're showing a little bit more of their home decor and some of their outdoor capabilities, some of the stuff to hold potted plants and things like that. All heavy-duty stuff, high-tech, gridironmetalworks.com. Of course, you can go get a grill grate there, too, with your favorite squad. Of course, that's Purdue. But you can get another school if you have somebody else that's less smart than you are and chooses another school. If you're in God's country and you want to get a bite to eat, head over to AJ's, watch a game, enjoy a pint of one of their 20 beers on tap, and Boiled Sports' favorite burger, of course, eatajs.com. You can go to eatajs.com and get it ordered to your place, too, if you live near campus. So, finally, Martin Vintage. Martin Vintage. Soft, comfortable, classic T-shirts with Purdue logos and graphics. Check them out, martinvintage.com. Enter Boiled at checkout for 15% off. This last week, or actually just days ago now, I think it's 2 days ago or yesterday, Mark Hagan was announced as Purdue's defensive line coach. I think it's an excellent hire. I said that on Twitter, and for multiple reasons, I think this is excellent. But one of the big ones, of course, he has deep Purdue connections. He coached at Purdue from 2000 to 2010, crossing over from Tiller into the Hope eras. Then he went to IU. Then he went to Texas A&M, finally to Texas, his last stop, and was out with that last coaching change, and he comes back to Purdue as defensive line coach. A lot of people have asked the question, why hasn't he been called the defensive coordinator? Why wasn't he hired there? I don't know the reason behind that. I think he'd be a very capable defensive coordinator. I think he'd be a good hire. He's an IU alum, which you can't hold it against him too much because he did serve so well at Purdue under Tiller and Hope, coaching the defensive lines, and I think he sent 6 linemen to the NFL. He's a very, very good recruiter. He's a fiery, passionate guy. Maybe not as fiery as the last 2 defensive coordinators, specifically Holt. But like I said, he was hired as defensive line coach, and Coach Brom still has some work ahead of him when it comes to filling the voids on his staff. Of course, he has to fill the player personnel role that is left by Eron Hodges not being renewed. That's one that still makes me scratch my head. I don't understand it. Big fan of Coach Hodges. I met him personally, like him, and thought he was doing a great job. Maybe there's more we don't know. I don't know. I know that he was surprised by it, and he's looking for work now. The DB coach position that is left by Greg Brown not being renewed as well. Coach Brown is a wily veteran, but he's no longer on staff. And then, of course, the defensive coordinator position, super important, and left when Diaco was fired. So Purdue has their work cut out for them. Brom has his work cut out for him finding coaches. There are a lot of rumors going around about offers being put out there, but I haven't really heard anything substantiated about who has turned down Coach Brom. Based on the timing, it seems that there has been 1 or 2 coaches that have turned him down, but I really don't know. People have asked that on Twitter, and I don't have a good answer for them. I apologize. Max, hello. Good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. So we've got this off season has been pretty lively, of course. In football, you've had tons of you've had movement, right? Of course, you've had attrition. Most recently, Tariq Murphy officially transferred or entered the portal anyway. We don't know where he's going. He joined Ahmad Anderson and Jared Sparks in the transfer list of guys that either had played significant roles or we thought might eventually play significant roles. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Giovanni Howard also transferred. But there have been some positives, especially of late. Last week was a big one. Purdue got news that Joseph Anderson would be coming to God's country. And that's a good deal. It's a big deal because Anderson is I think anyone would consider him a blue chip coming out of high school. He had a massive amount of offers. He was offered from Bama, Clemson, Georgia, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and a host of others. He was a top 125 type player, according to almost every recruiting magazine. That's a really, really big deal. They got him. He's a defensive lineman. I've been told he likes playing end, and he's kind of a traditional large defensive end. But I think as Purdue fans, we think of the defensive end as a speed rusher, an edge guy. He's definitely not that. He's bigger than that. So we'll see where he fits in, but I did a little research on him. He hasn't played a whole bunch. He's only played in 3 games at South Carolina in 2 seasons. He'll have a lot of eligibility left. He'll actually have 3 years of eligibility left because of this season not really counting according to NCAA. But Max asks a question. Have I heard that Mike Elston, the Mike Elston rumors from Notre Dame? I've heard the rumors, yes. Do I know anything about him more? No. And I haven't heard those rumors from a bunch of good sources, it's people talking, really, more than anything. Good question, but I don't know anymore. And I generally trust Golden Black, specifically Brian Newbert, as much as anybody, any source, when it comes to Purdue news. And I don't get the idea that he really knows what's coming. I think he thinks there will be a hire this week, but still, even there, we don't know. But back to the talk of the guys that are transferring in. You've got Joseph Anderson, who is probably the most noteworthy just because all those offers. He's a guy that really Purdue wouldn't have had any chance to get out of high school because he was so highly touted. But maybe the biggest transfer in is the grad transfer, Tyler Witt. He's 6'2", 305 pounds from Western Kentucky. He was Conference USA second team last year in 2019. He's a super intelligent guy. Really, if you listen to his interviews, he's one of those linemen who seems like kind of a nasty person on the field. I've seen him play. He looks mean. He plays with a chip on his shoulder, which I love from an offensive lineman. But man, he sounds smart and he's good to listen to. So Tyler Witt, I think, will make instant impact for our Boilers. He's got, I think he has 2 years of eligibility left if he wants him. But my guess is he'll be a 1-year guy. And speaking of 1-year guys, there's a bit of a surprise, of course. We had I'm trying to think of his name right now and had it in my notes. But there's been some good surprises with Purdue players coming back. The offensive lineman who transferred in last year, he'll be back. That's a big deal. You have a lot of good news from a personnel standpoint, I think. It could have gone a lot worse, especially in the wake of the way the season went. I thought there was a really good chance to see a bit of rushing for the exits. But I think the longer we go right now, as we get closer to classes starting up next week, the better Purdue's football team looks and the better the chances are of the dust kind of settling and that team settling as well. You have a couple other transfers that might make a difference right away. Dylan Downing, he was added back in November, really, and I missed it. Like the official announcement, I think, was December. Late November, early December. He's a kid from Carmel. He played at UNLV for a season. He didn't have a lot of carries. He's a bigger back. Kyle Smith, who does recruiting analysis, said he called him a big back with a lot of speed and a good mix of speed and power, great vision. I watched his videos. Looks pretty good. He played for Carmel. He played with a lot of good linemen a couple seasons ago in Carmel near Indianapolis. So he played with a really good team, which always helps. Well, okay, Max asked another question. Is next year a make or break year for Brown? I don't know how you couldn't point at it being an extremely important year. But I don't know. I don't know if we can say make or break simply because there's still, unless I don't like getting into that. We got a lot of variables ahead. I think if you have a season that is a 6 or 7 win season, I think you'll still have a lot of Purdue fans that are getting antsy. I think there's no doubt about that. But I really hope they can make a big jump, and I believe they can. I still think the personnel's good, but something just seems broken, and I don't know what it is. But it definitely didn't look like the Purdue program that I thought we'd see this year. That could be a myriad of things. Maybe the coaching staff and the players all struggled with the start and stops of the way practices were handled. But I'm hoping they can get back to where they were, and Brom can light a fire under them and kind of come in there with a lot more confidence, because he sure as hell didn't look very confident towards the end of the season, which was tough to watch. But I don't know if it's a make or break year. His buyout will still be pretty significant at the end of next season. I am obviously rooting for it not to be a break for him. I want him to succeed. I want Purdue to succeed. The personnel's there. I think even without these guys coming in, I think they have a lot of talent returning. Another transfer's coming in, Octavius Brothers, the best name in this group of transfers coming in. Brothers comes from Auburn. He's a 3-star guy out of high school. He had offers from Tennessee, North Carolina, Miami before deciding on Auburn, and he also had very limited duty. But he's a linebacker. So you've got a linebacker, a tackle, a running back, which helps with the loss of Murphy and Armour, and then of course Tyler Witt. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. If you look ahead at the roster, and I've been doing this on the offensive side, in the 2 deeps, Purdue loses really 2 players. That's pretty darn good place to be, obviously. The bad thing is this offense was far from productive, especially towards the end of the season. Losing Rondale Moore and Grant Hermans is a big deal. I loved Hermans. He was steady, played for a long time. I think the offensive line could become a strength really quickly because of these upperclassmen anchors, the transfers. And then on top of that, you've got a lot of talent behind them, especially on the young side, the young guys. On the defensive side, you've got Barnes, of course, is gone. Thieneman is, I think, officially decided to not come back. He was a 5th-year guy, a redshirt, former walk-on, but very important. I think he started for 2 seasons and played for 3 behind his brother. And then I don't think we've heard anything official from Neal or Watts. I've been trying to find that. If you guys can tell me I'm wrong, I'd love to hear it. But I have not seen anything official, so I put them in kind of the caution. They're not in, I've read bars on the people that are definitely not coming back. So really you've got, and then Simeon Smiley is not returning, and Giovanni Howard, of course, is gone. J.D. Dellinger from special teams may be back now. That's a good thing. I don't think he's made an official announcement, but he's kind of a little more positive than he was a month and a half ago. So that's very, very good to hear. And so that, I mean, there's a lot of talent returning, and because of that, there's a lot of reason to be optimistic about the Boilers. But of course, there's also a lot of reason to think things can go south for the program, as they already have, or they could stay south if you're a pessimist. There's a guy on Twitter who keeps saying, sounds to me like Brom's lost control of the program. I'm not going to go that far. I don't think that's true at all. In fact, I just think it's a really crappy season. Last year is different. He really didn't have 2 similar seasons in a row, even though they were both bad. The results were bad. But I am hopeful and think good things can happen. Over to basketball, which is obviously important this time of year. Purdue's coming off that big win versus Michigan State. Very ugly win. Purdue scored 16 points in the first half, which is pretty unacceptable. But then they came back mostly on the shoulders of their defense, and Trayveon Williams is playing like an absolute monster. Trayveon had 24 points and 6 rebounds in the second half alone. Michigan State had 23 points in that second half. But Purdue dug themselves a pretty big hole. So that's one of those games, though, it looks like it could be a pivotal game if they can do something with it. The question is, will they? I don't know. I think that's a really, really tough question to answer right now. Purdue, of course, has shown these flashes of brilliance or greatness, and then haven't done much with it. bracketologists say that every Big Ten team is going to need to finish at least above 500 to go to the dance. For Purdue to finish above 500, they're going to have to win 7 games. And if the Nebraska game that was canceled or postponed isn't made up, Purdue will finish a game over 500. If you look at the schedule, you see the problem that I do, and that is there are a lot of good teams on the schedule. Teams like Penn State, who actually in the computer polls are a couple notches above Purdue. They'd at least have to split with them. Minnesota's another, I think, team that you'd say maybe they can get one from them. They only have 1 game against Nebraska left. That matters. They have a game versus Maryland, but Maryland has, obviously they just beat Illinois, so they've shown some life. But this next one coming up is obviously pretty important to Purdue fans. Purdue plays IU. They look to extend the streak, I think, to 7. I think it would be 7 straight, which sounds like a lot, but really in the history of the rivalry, it's not a ton. Purdue won their longest streak goes way back to the early 1900s, was a 12-game winning streak over IU, and IU's longest winning streak is 13 back in the 40s and 50s. But Purdue and IU both have gone on runs like this. That's not uncommon. I think as recently as the early aughts, IU had another run. But Purdue has had a lot of them, if you look at it, and that's why Purdue is so ahead in the series. If you're keeping score at home, Purdue would need to lose the next 33 straight games to tie the series, which I don't see any reason at all to believe that's going to happen. So Purdue's, we can say dominance over IU continues, but I don't know if I can think of a series or an opponent where they're just kind of more ready, more ripe to turn it. It seems like IU's do, is what I'm saying. I don't think, if you look at IU's team, there's any real reason to believe that, because IU is not much better Purdue, if they are at all. Yeah, I think this is a game, to me, it's a coin flip. I've watched IU play multiple times. They have one of the worst offenses I've ever seen. And that's saying a lot, since I just watched Purdue play Michigan State and score 16 points in the half. But IU's offense is very disorganized. It's kind of a poor man's isolation offense where guys stand in the corner a lot. The screens aren't very effective. They don't look to pass for a reason, meaning it doesn't look like they're trying to set up a shot. It's a pretty awful offense. Their defense is good, and they have some good athletes, but they also have some guys on the roster that I don't know how they're playing Big Ten basketball. I think these two teams, Purdue and IU, both have huge room for improvement. I think Purdue has a bigger upside as they stand right now, but if you look at IU's roster top to bottom, the guys coming out of high school, they have plenty of talent on this roster to win more games than they're winning. And that's why IU's fan base has so much apathy set in. If you listen to them on Twitter, if you know any of them, they're not too excited about what they see from Archie Miller's gang. Purdue, the biggest issue when I look at Purdue, the biggest issue, of course, is the lack of consistency over a game. I think really they've played one complete game versus a good team, and that was versus Liberty. Liberty is now 11-4. Purdue played good start to finish with them, really on the shoulders of Zach Edey playing so well. Liberty didn't have an answer to his size and his touch. And Trayveon Williams' game versus Michigan State is kind of maybe a microcosm of the entire Boiler team, right? He had a very quiet first half versus Michigan State. Really, all he was doing effectively was he had a couple boards, but he wasn't scoring. I think he got in a bit of foul trouble, which is not new for Purdue at all. It's very familiar for us as Purdue fans. And then he just went off in the second half. And we've seen this over and over where Purdue digs himself a 10 to 15 to 20 point hole versus good teams, and then they have to fight back just to make it a game. So if they can put together another complete game, that would be another step in the right direction. Trayveon Williams, after the game, when getting the team together, they were all congratulating him, telling him how great of a job he did. But really, he was saying, hey, guys, we got to learn from this, and I think it's one of the best pieces of leadership I've heard. It's the first thing I thought, that this win isn't worth much unless you can build on it, and I think they can. If we look at the reasons, the things that would say that they probably could turn it around in a hurry and play more consistent in a hurry, I think it all comes down to Eric Hunter's play. Hunter has played maybe one of his worst stretches at Purdue in the last 3 or 4 games offensively. He's not scoring. He doesn't look confident when he's shooting the ball. But he doesn't look like he's trying to create. He's being patient in some ways, but maybe overly patient. For a guy that's a junior and you've got a bunch of pups behind you, I think patience is a good thing, and waiting for the game to come to you is a good thing. But at the same time, he's got to probably do a little bit more. Well, he's got to do a lot more on offense for Purdue to get better. The other option, of course, is for Newman and Ivy to grow up quickly. But I don't think they're going to grow up quickly. It looks to me like this season will be important to them to get their legs under them, but they're going to show flashes of brilliance. They're going to show that they have a great future, and they are a great future for these Boilers. But until somebody scores consistently on offense in the backcourt for Purdue, I think it's going to be the same type of season we've been seeing. Tough to watch on offense, inconsistent games. They really need to change that to get to the tournament. So that's about it for today. Like I said, Purdue will play IU on Thursday at, I believe, 7:30 at Assembly Hall. Looking forward to it. It'll be weird. An empty Assembly Hall is not the same as an Assembly Hall filled with a bunch of obnoxious IU fans. So they still get calls there, though. So there's a weird, ghastly thing that happens at IU still. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day. Hammer down. God bless you. And we'll see you again soon on these. Don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube. Comment over on Twitter or down in the comment section here. But Twitter is probably the best way to interact with me and Jay and Anish and Michael and Dave, if you know all of our handles. But thanks for tuning in. God bless you. Hammer down. Have a great day.